She stormed into the house with a gun, not to kill, but to finally make him see. Sarah stood in the doorway of the living room, trembling, her face carved by tears and fury she'd held inside for 23 years. In her hand, their father's old revolver. In her eyes, not madness, but cold, hard-won truth. And sitting in the rocking chair before her, sipping bourbon, was her older brother Michael, the man who'd stolen everything from her, even her name. "You knew," she whispered, though her voice cracked like a gunshot. "You knew she wasn't my mother." Michael slowly set down his glass. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" "Ginny Walker didn't give birth to me. She adopted me. And you knew all along." "You stayed silent." He didn't answer. Just looked away toward the window, where a light rain fell, as if the sky, too, remembered old wounds. But Sarah wasn't leaving. Not this time. Today, she'd come for the truth. And if the truth wouldn't come willingly, she'd carve it out of his memory like a surgeon cutting out cancer. Sarah always felt she didn't quite belong in this family. Not physically. She resembled her mother. The same thick chestnut braid, the same gray-green eyes that reflected oceans of unread books. But inside, everything was different. Michael, 5 years older, had treated her with irritated condescension since childhood. He'd laughed when she fell off her bike, taken her toys under the guise of "for your own good." And when she turned 13 and asked why she didn't have an outie belly button like everyone else in the family, he'd just smirked, "Because you're special." Back then, she'd thought it was a compliment. Ginny Walker, her mom, was kind but distant. She'd stroke Sarah's hair, read to her at night, helped with homework, but never hugged her the way mothers hug their own. As if she feared touching something that didn't belong to her. Her father, Thomas Walker, was different. He gave Sarah books, taught her to shoot, called her his little owl for her love of late-night talks. But even he, a year before his death, in the quiet of a hospital room, had gripped her hand and whispered, "You don't need to know everything, not until you're ready." She hadn't understood. Now she did. 20 years had passed. Sarah had become an archivist at the State Historical Society in Iowa. She worked with dusty files, old court records, forgotten wills. And one day, in a folder from 1978, she found her own name. Sarah Ann Beckett. Born April 3, 1982. Placed for adoption June 17, 1982. Adoptive parents, Thomas and Ginny Walker. Below it, a photograph. A young woman with a hollowed face and empty eyes. Caption: Emily Beckett. Died of postpartum complications. June 5, 1982. Sarah stayed in the archive until closing, then drove home and cried all night. By morning, she'd booked a ticket to Minnesota. Michael still lived in the same house where they'd grown up. The one with the wrought iron porch where he'd kissed his future wife for the first time. The flower beds Ginny had faithfully watered until the day she died. The basement where Thomas had kept his hunting rifle and the family's secrets. "Why?" Sarah shouted, jabbing the revolver toward the floor. "Why did you hide this? Why did you stay silent?" Michael stood. Slowly. Carefully. "Because you were a child. And the truth kills. I would have survived." "No, you wouldn't have." He walked to the sideboard, pulled out a bottle of water, poured a glass. "Your mother, Emily Beckett, was ill. Mentally. She couldn't raise you. Ginny and Dad saved you. And you? What did you do?" Silence. Long, heavy. "I saw the papers. When I was 15. Dad left them in the safe. I read everything. And I realized if you found out, you'd break. You were already too fragile. Too sensitive. So you decided to become the jailer of my soul? I decided to be an older brother. Even if it meant lying." Sarah lowered the gun. Not because she believed him, but because she suddenly saw him differently. Not as a monster, but as a man who'd carried this secret like a stone in his pocket. "Where are the papers?" she asked quietly. "In the basement. In the safe behind the lake painting." "Show me." He nodded. Led her down the creaking stairs into the cool, wood and mildew-scented darkness. There, behind the old painting of Lake Minnetonka, was indeed a safe. Michael punched in the code, their father's birthday. Inside, a folder. Yellowed. Her name on the cover. Sarah pulled out the documents. The will. Medical records. A letter. If you're reading this, Sarah, then you know. Forgive us. We wanted to give you a life, not a past. You were always our daughter. Ginny loved you more than herself. And I prayed every night that you'd never learn how you came into this world. But if you have know this, you were never a mistake. You were a miracle. Signed, Thomas Walker. Tears streamed freely now. She sank onto a toolbox and wept. Michael stood in the shadows. I didn't want you to read that like this. Why didn't you tell me? At least after Mom died. Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd walk away. Say, you're not my family. And you were my sister. The only one. I am your sister, she whispered. But now I'm also Emily's daughter. And I need to know who she was. The next day, Sarah drove to Chicago, the city where she was born, where her mother died. Archives, hospitals, old neighbors all told the same story. Emily Beckett had been a young artist. Lived alone. The pregnancy was an accident. The father vanished. She refused abortions. Gave birth. And died a week later from sepsis. But in her apartment, they'd found a journal. Sarah bought it from an elderly neighbor for $1,000. In it, no madness. Only love. Today I felt her move. I named her Sarah like a star. Because even in the deepest dark, she'll shine. I won't be able to stay with her. But I want her to know I chose life. For her. Not for me. If you're reading this, Sarah, forgive me for not being your mother. But I loved you from the first beat of your heart to my very last. Sarah sat on a park bench, reading these words in the rain. Her mother wasn't a monster. She wasn't ill. She was a woman who paid with her life so her daughter could live. And in that moment, revenge ceased to be the goal. Revenge is wanting to see pain in the eyes of the one who hurt you. But Michael hadn't hurt her. He tried to save her. She returned to Minnesota. Michael waited for her on the porch. In his hands, 2 glasses of lemonade. You came back, he said, relief naked in his voice. I read Emily's journal. And? She wasn't crazy. She was brave. Michael nodded. Dad knew that. But he feared you'd find her and turn away from us. I didn't turn away. I just needed to know the truth. She sat beside him. Placed the revolver on the table between them, a symbol that the war was over. I'm not angry anymore. You have every right to be. But I choose not to be. I choose family. Even if it's imperfect. Michael took her hand. For the first time in 20 years, not with condescension. Just as a brother. Are you still my little L? Always. The next day, they drove together to the cemetery, where Ginny and Thomas rested. And beside them, a small, forgotten headstone, Emily Beckett. 1960 to 1982. Mother. Sarah laid a flower on it. Thank you, Mom. Then she hugged Michael. Revenge is wanting someone else to suffer. But real strength lies in forgiveness. Because only then do you stop being a victim. And become yourself.